For this project, I'm going to show you how to forge a mini master sword out of styrofoam. Make one just for fun and cosplay, or bury it in a bucket of sand and turn it into solid metal. However you wield your power is completely up to you, because with this legendary sword, you are the master. Let's begin this project with another sheet of dollar store foam board and the hot wire styro slicer I showed you how to build in a previous project. You'll also need this mini master sword template I drew in Photoshop, and you can have it for free if you just say thank you and check the description for a link. Now you probably remember that dollar store foam board is just a layer of foam sandwiched between two pieces of paper, and if we carefully use a fingernail to pull up on one of the corners, the paper peels right off with hardly any trouble at all. Alright, let's get busy cutting out all the individual pieces from the template, and if you want to save yourself from having to glue them on, then simply print your templates on full-page label paper instead. Cut all the shapes out as cleanly and neatly as you can, then go find a glue stick so we can stick them firmly onto the foam board next. Now when you're adding glue to the back of the paper templates, you don't actually need to smear the entire piece of paper. That'll only make it trickier to get off later on. So just add a generous coating around the edges instead, then take time to position the template carefully on the foam board, pressing the edges down as smoothly as you can get them. And if you utilize the space by keeping the pieces close together, you'll be able to get 3 swords from one board. If everything looks smooth and secure, then go ahead and power up the styro slicer. The styro slicer is a homemade hot wire foam cutting factory that has adjustable power settings for slicing styrofoam of all shapes and sizes, and can probably create any custom cosplay or foam prop you can think up. Alright, the first thing we need to do with this foam board is chop the templates down into manageable pieces. I typically slide the foam up and down the wire a few times to rough out the foam pieces a little faster, then carefully trace each of the shapes once they're smaller and easier to work with. Now the 2 base blades need some really special attention, so let's focus on them next. Tracing around the edges of just the hilt and the handles first, you can see the hot wire slices easily through the foam but doesn't actually go through the paper. That's really cool because it leaves us with a really smooth and professional looking cut. Now hopefully you didn't cut the blade out yet, because there's a cool little trick I'm going to show you for doing that next. Move the arm of the styro slicer to the side of the cutting base, then slide the wire back into the center of the work surface, and you'll see you can adjust the angle of the wire. How cool is that? This means that now we can give our blade a nice beveled edge. So set the wire around 45 degrees and double check it's pointing away from you, then lay the sword flat on the cutting base and trace the blade. Keep the wire as perpendicular to the lines of the template as you can, then carefully trace the edges in 4 separate passes. When you've made it around to the other side of the hilt, then stop and pull the sword straight back toward you to release the wire. Go ahead and peel the styrofoam off from around the edges and take a look at that cool beveled blade. And now that you got the hang of it, go ahead and do the other sword the same way so we can move on to modifying the thickness of the handle next. Now for this next trick, you're going to need to adjust the blade of the styro slicer so it hangs horizontally over the cutting base. And just like that, you've got the ability to cut foam bits in half. The blade can adjust to any thickness you want, but for simplicity, we'll just be cutting a few select pieces in half. The only parts that actually need to be downsized are the 2 small blades and the 2 handle grips, which you can see leave us with 4 of each. But you can scrap the ones with paper glued to them because we won't be needing them anymore. Alright, the pieces are all cut to shape, so let's peel the paper templates off the foam, and if you're careful not to rip the paper, you can actually use the templates again to make another sword. Now before going any further, it's a good idea to lay out all the pieces on a table to make sure they're all there. You should have 28 pieces all together, and if you do, then let's get busy gluing them together. There's a little diagram on the template that shows how the finished sword is going to look, so start assembling it by laying one of the base blades flat on the table and gluing the hilt to the top. Take a little time to adjust the bottom and the sides so they match up with the base plate on the bottom, then simply follow the pattern for the rest of the pieces and you should end up with 2 completed sides of the sword that look identical. Now simply add a generous amount of glue to the flat sides on the bottom, then gently but firmly seal them together. That's pretty much it. All that's left for finishing our master sword now is carving out the Triforce. Use a pair of scissors or an X-Acto knife to carefully draw the 3 lines to form a triangle in the middle, then carve the little channels as deep as you like. With that final step, your 3D foam sword is finished, and of course you can get creative and customize it any way you want. I gently sanded the sword with a 220 grit sanding sponge to smooth down any imperfections, making our little homemade creation look surprisingly professional. Now before you get too crazy with your sword, it's a good idea to leave it overnight so the glue has a chance to dry completely. And if you plan on turning your sword into aluminum, you're going to need a foam riser like this as well, so you might as well make one of those while you're waiting. Simply cut the riser to whatever length you need, then bury the sword in a bucket of sand and pour hot molten aluminum over top. You'll see the styrofoam vaporizes instantly from the extreme temperature, allowing the metal to flow in and take its place before the sand even has a chance to collapse. After 5 to 10 minutes of cooling, the metal will still be scalding hot, but should be hard enough for you to grip onto with a pair of pliers or channel locks so you can unearth the sword from the sand. Now the finer the sand you use, the more detail will be captured in your casting. And if you're happy with how it looks, just dip the whole thing in a bucket of water to cool it, then clean it up a bit to finish it off. These swords will take some time and some skill to make, but they're so low cost that you can make a whole arsenal of foam weaponry for just a couple of bucks in a bit of your time. Well, now you know how to use a little electricity and some dollar store foam board to forge a powerful and impressive mini master sword. By the way, if you try experimenting with different kinds of metals, you'll probably find you can cast a sword from just about anything you want. I melted a few handfuls of bullet casings and turned them into a golden sword. It's over 3 times heavier than aluminum, but it makes a really cool addition to my metal casting collection. Well, that's it for now. If you like this project, perhaps you like some of my others. Check them out at thekingofrandom.com. Hey guys, I'm sharing the love today with my good friend Colin Furs, who's probably the internet's most amazing mad inventor, and he's doing so many amazing things right now on his YouTube channel. I found Colin's channel over a year and a half ago when he built a wrist-mounted pyro torch that shoots flames over 12 feet long, and I've been amazed by all his crazy, inspiring ideas ever since. This is a man driven by passion and adrenaline with no regard for health or safety, which is one of the reasons I really like him. Colin's made some pretty epic projects you might have already come across, like a retractable hidden blade from the Assassin's Creed video games, and a fully functional set of Wolverine claws. If you haven't seen those videos yet, then check them out down here. He's also made Magneto shoes, an ice bike, and even a remote-controlled trash can. How funny is that? Colin's an ex-plumber with no engineering qualifications at all, and is constantly pushing himself and the boundaries of sanity to bring you high-quality entertainment. So go check him out. He's a real out-of-the-box thinker, and he can make anything. And if Colin sent you here from his channel, then welcome aboard. I've made a playlist of projects I think you might like, and stuck them right here. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next project video. I'll talk to you then.